blasphemy. They thought this. This was their thought pattern. They didn't even speak this aloud because what he told them, he said, which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or take up your mat and walk. What ended up happening was he told the guy, he said, just so all you know that the Son of Man has the power and the authority to do this, take your mat, get up and walk. And he did. Okay? Guess what? The Pharisees, the experts in the law, they praised, they worshiped, they honored. There was a praise ceremony going on. Guess what? He was the only one that got healed. The rest of them didn't. It said Jesus had the power to heal them. Okay? Because of their disbelief and he told them what was in their heart, they couldn't do it. Okay? Well, let's look at some other situations where there's a reward. You know the centurion. You know that. You know the story of the centurion. You know, the centurion, what he had a paralyzed servant that was in great deal of pain. And he wanted to get healing for his servant, so he went to Jesus. When he went to Jesus, he told him, he explained the situation. Jesus says, I'll come right now. He says, I am not worthy for you to come under my roof. This is like remember, the Romans conquered the Israelites, okay? And he's telling Jesus, I'm not worthy. Wait a minute, I just conquered you, you know? But no, he understood authority. He understood the authority that came with him, okay? He had people above him. He was a centurion. Centurion, there were 60,000 soldiers, okay? And what there was each centurion had 100 men underneath him. He was one of them, okay? And he explained the circumstance to Jesus. He told Jesus, no, this is what, he's telling Jesus how this works. Jesus knew how it worked, but he's telling him. He says, if I tell this guy to come, he comes. If I tell that one to go, he goes. If I tell this one to do this, he does this. And I tell that one to do that. All you have to do is say the word, and I'll know it'll be done. And guess what? Let's not miss this. What did he say? Jesus says, in all Israel, I haven't seen anyone with such great faith. Remember, he put John the Baptist in that category. He put Jesus' mother in that category. Remember, they're in all Israel, okay? He said, I haven't seen anyone with greater faith than that. And by that, his servant was healed because of the honor, okay? He could have ordered. He had the authority. He could have ordered them, said, I want you to do this, but he didn't. He knew the workings of authority. And all it had to do was he had enough faith that if Jesus said it, it was going to happen. Okay? We see these other ones, they doubted it. Okay? We see this one. Let's go to another one. Let's talk about another one. Let's talk about the lady that her daughter was actually demon possessed. Okay? And you'll know the story. The story is whenever she kept going to Jesus saying, please heal my daughter. Please heal my daughter. I want you to heal my daughter. Jesus ignores her. Finally, Jesus gives her a response. And the response Jesus says, you don't take the bread from the children's table and give it to the dogs. Okay? What would happen to today in society if that was said to a woman? What would happen if Pastor Steve said that to someone in this church, a lady in this church? You could probably hear it now. There would have been screaming, hollering, how dare you call me a dog? Who do you think you are? You call yourself a man of God. And out the door she would have stormed that you call this love. Out the door she would have went, guess what? She wouldn't have got her healing. But this woman wasn't giving up. She wasn't going to give up. What she said was, her response was, yes, but even the children, even the dogs get the crumbs off the children's table. Jesus looks at her in amazement and heals her daughter. Okay? She had a choice to make from one to the other of what was going to happen. She chose to honor. Okay? And the thing of it is our circumstances in life that people do to us, we need to know how to respond to those circumstances in life. It isn't always that you're right. You can be right, but yet God doesn't want you to handle the situation. I don't want to say any names because for the fact we are recording, and so I'd like to give you an instance one time in my life that it was it was tough. Sometimes we're right. The circumstance, you're right. And I can remember me and my wife and the kids. Lord help me. I don't know why. But anyways, we had a circumstance one time at our house that to me, we were just starting out in life, and we didn't have a lot of money, and so I chose a way of heating my home with a alternate source that wouldn't require a large cost, okay? And so I chose to do that, and it was affecting some neighbors around me that I tried certain ways, but it just couldn't happen, that it was more economical for me to do it a certain way. So I'm a Christian. I'm a new Christian. We had just got saved, a few years before that. So finally I thought, you know what? I'm just going to not use that source of heat. I'll go to another one. So, and I can remember, I'm right. I have a valid point. I have a right to do this. So I don't think I ever told my wife, but I even asked the counsel of a lawyer. And you know what advice he told me? He said, it's easier, I found in life, it's easier to get along with your friends than make enemies. And I could have went to him and said, but you don't understand. There's no law that says that I can't do this. So I chose to do it. And so what happened was, we got windows, and very good ones. God was working behind the scenes at something I couldn't see. What happened was, there was I can remember telling, I think I said in a Thursday night meeting, I said, God told me, I said one time, when I would see them, I would wave. And you know those waves, you've done it. That person, it's the right thing to do. But what God said to me was, I was going to work and I had to go by their house. I was going to work a different way, and God said, I said, what do you want me to do, Lord? He said, I want you to pray for him. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, no, I want you to pray. And I don't want you to pray curses on him. I want you to pray blessings on him. I want you to pray for them people that you mean it. And so I did. I was obedient, A lot of work I'd done in my house. We needed a driveway put in. He was the one that said, tell you what, got the rock up on top of the hill. I'll bring the dozer down for you. He took his excavator, cut my whole driveway, and didn't charge me a penny. Took my driveways probably from here out to the parking lot. God worked in that situation. I liked to hunt, used to love to hunt. He had all the property. He said, come on, you're going up, you're going to go hunt with that. Actually, I could have made an enemy right there, but through obedience to God, for honoring who he was, and when I would wave, I meant the wave. I can honestly say I meant that wave. Other circumstances in life, I can remember one time, I was telling my wife yesterday, I was at work, and this was years ago, and we were having trouble at work, and one of the pumps at work, the gun barrel was going out, and there was only me and my boss and another guy there. And my boss said, Stan, I'm going away on vacation. And I said, well, that gun barrel's going out. And he said, yeah, but all the parts are on the shelf. I said, okay. So it was out, and the owner of our company was going down by. This was probably in the 90s, and he was going by, and he noticed the tipple was down, and he come up, okay? He come up, and I had a situation that I had to, well, what do I do, So he comes up, and I knew he was going to ask these questions, and I knew he was going to be mad. So he comes up, and I called the one mechanic we have. I said, can you come in? I'm the only guy, and he was the only mechanic. That's how little our company was. And so up comes the owner of the company, and he comes in and he says, what's going on? And he says, there's a gun barrel. The mechanic said, there's a gun barrel out. He says, I can see that much. So I'm trying to avoid him because I didn't want to answer any questions. Okay? So he comes over. Finally, he identifies me. And he says, Stan, I said, what? I said, what's going on? I said, well, we have to get this rebuilt. I got all the parts and everything. He says, do we have one on the shelf? I said, no, we don't have one on the shelf. He says, come for a walk with me. So we go for a walk. And we walk away from where he pulls me away from what we're doing. The other mechanic's working on it. And he says to me, he says, Stan, he says, what should I do? He said, I don't know. He said, be my boss. He said, I've given him so many chances. He said, I told him to have all the parts here. They're not here. He says, I don't know. He said, maybe I ought to just give you his job. And I'm like, oh no. I'm thinking to myself, don't do that, you know. So I'm young, you know. But anyways, right there I had a decision to make, okay? I had to be I was a Christian. I had to honor him, and I had to honor my boss. So I said, oh, I wouldn't do that. I said, wouldn't you just want to demote him or something? I don't know if I'd want to do that. I'm not a firm believer in demoting. Okay, I'm going to Vegas. He says, I'll be back. When I get back, I'll render my decision. So we're up there, and the mechanic comes to me, and he says, what's wrong with you? I said, nothing, why? He said, all you would have had to do was say the word. You would have had that man's job. He said, I've never seen a guy like you. My words was to him, I don't need to get him fired. There's nothing in this world that I would do. I don't need to get that man fired. I said, not this guy. I'm telling you, as true as I'm standing here today, people, had I not known Jesus Christ, I would have done it. I'm telling you to this day. The rest of the story was, he had all the parts on the shelf. He told him that he had all the parts on the shelf. He told the owner of the company, they're all there. Do you still want me to get a spare gun barrel? He said, no, if you have all the parts there. He remembered that. What would I have looked like had I tried to do that? I showed my boss honor. I had to show my boss honor, and I had to show the owner of the company honor. So I didn't add to anything, and I did not take away from anything. If he asked the question, I answered it correctly as possible. And, you know, without knowing Jesus Christ, I wouldn't have done that. You have to honor. You need honor within you. Honor comes from the heart of the matter. It doesn't, you can read all the books and you can do all you want, but you actually have to act it out. You actually have to act it out. You do. There was some things in here that John Bevere was talking about. I'd like to maybe share a couple of them with you, and it's how we respond. We see the situation. I gave you the two situations with the centurion and him. You know, John Bevere said that the one instance, it's how God works. He said that, you remember, I know Dell even talked about this, about T.L. Lewis and Daisy Lewis. I don't know if you know them, but they were ministers, and they ministered a lot over in Europe and there in Asia, the other countries, China, in those areas. And he said he could remember one time, he said Daisy, they were ministering at this event one time, and they brought a baby up. This woman brought this baby to this meeting, and the baby was dead. And it was actually, she wrapped it all up, the head and everything. And after the service is over, she got Daisy, and she said to Daisy, she said, would you pray for my baby? And Daisy said, through the interpreter, Daisy said, sure. And she took the baby, and she just said a simple little prayer. And after the prayer, the baby coughed and sneezed. So she said, Daisy opened it up, looked down, seen the baby, put the thing back over, handed the baby back, gave it to the mother, And it wasn't until the mother opened it up, and with excitement, she begins to just be excited. What? And the mother told her, she said, the woman, what happened was when Daisy prayed for that baby and that baby came back to life, she said, my baby only had one eye and it had an empty socket on the other side. She said, when I opened that up, the baby had two eyes. And the point I want to make is Americans, and I'm not cutting this down, but I'm saying this, other countries, their honor system is different than ours is to today. John Bevere was telling me that he one time he was speaking in his service, okay? And he said after the service he would go back to the motel room. They was always hot, sweaty. They didn't have air conditioning like we did. And he said he got back to the motel room and he said these three ladies came in. One of the ladies came with a basin, bowed down before him, and the other one took and washed his hands, and he let them do it. And the other one had a towel, and he thought to himself, I'm perfectly able to wash my own hands. You don't need to do this. And he said he felt the Holy Spirit tell him, don't you dare say a word. And I guess in that, wouldn't you have? Isn't that your natural response? But you know, they show their respect and their honor. That's the way they show it, no matter what happens. And in today's society, with just what we went through in the past months, I don't have to tell you what it is. How much bickering and hatefulness that there is. You know, us Christians, we shouldn't participate in any of that. We should never, ever speak anything ill against anybody in there. Tell you another instance. You'll like this one. It's a good one. It's a moving one as well. John said he was invited one time, and it was in Southeast America, so we know that's got to be down around Florida somewhere, okay? But said he was invited to come and speak at a service, okay? And it's the way we're taught honor, and it's the way we're taught respect, is the point I want to make in this next one. Said he got to go speak at this place, and it was going to speak about 11 o'clock, and the minister was actually the chaplain of a prison, okay? So he said to John, hey, listen, if we would go to the prison, would you be willing to go to the prison? Would you be willing to speak to the prisoners? Would you do a worship service, like a preaching there and have worship? And he said, sure. He said, we'll be back in plenty of time. Do it. So he said, sure. So the morning that it came, at about 8:30, they got there, and he said, when I went into the place, he said, it was amazing. The praise and worship was like nothing that he's ever heard before. He said, you could tell, you could sense the presence of God at these prisoners was performing. He said, when he got time to preach, he said he preached like he never preached ever in his lifetime. He said you would have swore he was a football coach up there leading his team into victory, because he said, I was running around, dance and everything. And he said there was prophecy given. There was guys coming to know Jesus Christ through all this here. He said, it was amazing. He said, when we got all done, all wrapped up with everything, he said, we were going to go back to the church, and we were going, how great it's going to be when we get into that service, the power of God and the movement of God was on him. He said that when we go in there, it's just going to be awesome. He said we got into the building, it's completely opposite. He said, hey, what happened? He said, what actually happened? He said, he couldn't do anything. What ended up, he said, what happened was, he said, when he went in, he said, their thought pattern was, we've heard of hundreds and hundreds of preachers come through our building. What do you have that's any different? They weren't going there to see what God wanted. They were going to see what he had. And guess what? We see right before that, 3 hours before that, the movement of God, and then we turn around after 3 hours later and it's completely dead. It's because when we come to church, ladies and gentlemen, it's our attitude that we have when we come in here. Are we coming in with an attitude of what's going to happen, what's going to be preached, or are we coming on what does God have to say? You know, when Lisa had asked me, which the elders all, that's why we're speaking because of the sabbatical, but when Lisa asked me this, I don't know why, but God had a reason, because this kept getting delayed. You know, and do the process of starting and what am I going to preach on? You know, I come to know a couple weeks back, I'm not coming here just to hear songs. I'm coming to worship God. God, what do you have? I don't want to come to church just to say I came to church and I did my duty for that week. I want to come here so I can serve you, God. And what do you have? I don't want to lose that inheritance. You know, like I said, those decisions I told you with the house incident, I was right. I could have lost a lot of stuff. It could have cost me, I may have never seen it, but guess what? As I got older, God allowed me to see what he was doing, what was going to change there, okay? And the same for, just like I said, in the service for where he was at. The other thing was, the prophecies that was given that I didn't tell you about the ministers, a couple years later, he had seen and recognized the one guy running the sound system back in the thing. And John said he even asked him in that service, how long you in for? And he said he was so bright-eyed and cheery. He said, I was in for 3 life sentences. He said, and this guy, to be the way he is, he was respectful, honoring. And guess what? John said, I seen him 3 years later. He was at another church. And it was prophesied. John said, had I known beforehand he had 3 life sentences, he said, I prophesied to him that you would be in a church, another church somewhere, preaching or running the sound system. I'm sorry, he said running the sound system. He said, I prophesied to that. Had John known that, he said, I probably wouldn't have gave him that word, but he said, I just felt like God said that. That was the movement of God that was in there that day. It's all because of the way their attitude was towards that. And, you know, there's a lot. I don't want to keep you here. I wanted to keep you here till 6 o'clock so you could get there for halftime for the Steelers. but my point I wanted to make to you is I know there's a lot going on today in our country. I really, really do. I keep looking back, and I wanted to tell this, and I hope he holds this in this building. But I had a certain guy. There's a certain individual in here. We know what he does for a living, and he knows and we know what I do for a living. Well, you know, I always pray for when I get an inspection, okay? And I had a guy I'd never had before. And every time he would come, I would say, Lord, I said, I pray that today he's fair. I pray healing on him. I pray that he has a good atmosphere. I pray that the guy that travels with him is very respectful and everything. And I'm telling you what, something that I feared, actually, it was probably one of the best inspections that I've ever seen. They even commented, said, he told me he figured he would get more violations because we went so long without someone doing it. And you know, weeks before that, God got me, I sat down with my electrician and we went through everything. We went through every bucket. We went through everything that we could possibly do to see and to make sure that everything was compatible. And lo and behold, this guy shows up. Okay? And did I not get violent? Yes, I did. But you know what? It was so nice because I never seen someone actually talk himself out of violations to the fact that he made them that they were, the individual they were non-SNS. And I've heard stories that this guy was rough, he was hard. But you know, I'm not saying he's thorough, and he was doing his job. He was doing his job no matter what. I always said this here, if you're driving down the road and you see the red and blue lights in your thing, the thing of it is you ought to say, wonder what I did. But I got news for you. If you know you were speeding, correct? You know you're in the wrong. Why do you get nervous? You know you did wrong. Okay, and that's what I'm saying. There's no sense in disrespecting him. That's the worst thing you could do. You know, the first thing is if you honor him. I know there's times that, like I said, it's your attitude towards it. I've seen with some inspections when you're mean with them, guess what? You're going to get back what you're giving. You know, that's just the way it works. But if you honor them, and sometimes it don't work that way, but a lot of times it does. A lot of times it's how you respond to the circumstance and the situation. You know, it's not that God says God is there for you. He's there. I want to say one last point, and then we'll get going here. I want to tell you that God He is in all authority. I don't care what you say. He placed Pharaoh in his seat. He put Pharaoh where he was at, even though Pharaoh oppressed the Israelites. He knew about it. He put him there. Same way for Saul. A lot of people will tell you that people chose Saul as their king. No, he didn't. Samuel went and anointed Saul. Okay? God even said later on that he regretted making Saul king. But he put him there. Okay? All authority, even if it's corrupt. I want to say that again. Even if it's corrupt, God placed that authority there. Whether it's through whether it's through a country not being obedient, and sometimes judgment comes through that, but there is not an authority. So, no matter what happens in the United States, no matter what happens out in the public, God still is in charge. He is overtop all that authority. And there's no sense in complaining about it, because the only thing you want to do is go to God. Like I said, you want to talk about complaining? I can tell you what, I complained to God before. And he heard my complaints. That's the best person to go to. I can remember, quick story, and I'll leave. Tell you what, I can remember driving to East Brady every day. I was going down to Rosebud, and I used to get so mad because I had a 1989 Ford pickup truck. And I just bought it brand new. Okay? Brand spanking new. Here I am. It's 5 years later. I've got 100 and some thousand miles. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me, Lord. This is what it's all about. This is all worth. You know what? He heard that. Because it wasn't 6, 7 years later, he put me in a company truck, and he paid for the gas. He paid for all the repairs that was in it. And he's still doing that to the day. Okay? So if you want to complain, don't complain about that person over here and make him feel the same way and you drag him down. If you want to complain to our Father. That's the one that gives. He is the rewarder. He gives you an exceeding reward. Even though I was complaining, I didn't complain to other people as to where they would go out and follow suit in the same thing I was doing. I complained to him. He heard my cry. He heard what I was doing. He knew my heart. I didn't even have to tell him. He knew why I was disgusted. It took years later. I can sit back now and think, wow, I'm glad I complained to the right person. So, anyways, like I said, it's honor and reward. There was still more in here. There was so much more in here. Like I said, I hope I brought all the points across. I hope that you leave here today with if you already had this, great. If you didn't, I know God spoke this to me, because there's sometimes I do get that attitude towards that. You know, we got the mass system. We all think that and I'm not up here to go against anything. I found out in life sometimes if that's what they require, sometimes it's better to make a friend than it is an enemy. Okay? If it ain't going to harm you, you know what I'm saying? Go to God. If you don't like it, go to God. I believe he's going to change all this. I honestly do. I really, really, really do. And as long as we get on our knees and we earnestly seek him, things will change. God bless.